The next issue I'd like to discuss is the current scandal that's embroiled right now. Even as we are filming, the Minister of Economic and Fiscal Policy is in the Diet being pelted with eggs and tomatoes in a literal sense. He is on the hot seat because of a scandal that broke last week by a weekly publication called Shukan Bunshin. This is a very big deal, and it has a lot of moving parts in it. Michael Chuchek, you're watching this as well. This is pretty big. The minister is one of the favorites in the cabinet.
It's one of the closest friends of Mr. Abe. Absolutely vital. He's seen as the core group, part of the core group of people whom Abe will never take out of the cabinet and who were crucial in his becoming prime minister.
And pretty much a Mr. Clean.
And absolutely a Mr. Clean,
Right.
at least a reputation thereof, and someone who's been seen in the very, very otherwise shady and hazy speech patterns of most of the members of the cabinet as a truth talker.
Right.
Last week, however, when the article came out in Shukan Bunshin saying that he had physically pocketed cash from a construction company that was trying to negotiate with a government agency that was in charge of redevelopment, that they had all kinds of physical evidence that this event actually took place. Wow! His tongue, let's be real, he had tongue cancer and as a recovery from it. His tongue was suddenly once again out of commission.
It couldn't have come at a worse time with the Ginawan election happening just several days later. Bunshun comes out on Thursday. That just blew up, and it couldn't have come to a worse person on the cabinet. I mean, Mr. Amari, who is actually the leader of the TPP movement within the cabinet.
There was immediate questions. Does he have to resign immediately? If so, who goes to the signing ceremony for the TPP in New Zealand next month? Will he last until February the 4th? Suddenly, what was rock solid in terms of the image of the Abe cabinet was shaken. And let's be fair. This Abe cabinet is due a major scandal. As compared to the historical record, this has been an absolutely unshakable administration. Most administrations have, within a year or 2 years, been rocked by some kind of political scandal having to do with funding.
Right.
Here we had tiny little things, whether one minister's fans were actually fans or whether they were political literature, and she had to resign over that.
Well, that's my point, too. Those two women, remember when Abe announced to much fanfare that he had these more women than previous in his inner...
It was a record number, 5 women, yeah.
Weren't they gone within a matter of a few weeks? And yet it looks like with Amari, he is not going to unload him because of their closeness, but it sort of looks like a little bit of a double standard there. Maybe the women were more dispensable.
Well, they certainly were. In the case of Obuchi, she's from the absolute rival faction within the LDP.
I see.
So it was easy to get rid of her. It cut off her supposed rise eventually to the prime ministership. She was seen as that faction's princess. That is way on hold now. And as for the other minister, she was not really very close to Abe. But this man is. He's part of the AAAS, what they're called, the core members, Amari, Aso, who are really, really vital for maintaining the image of a stable, central core element that holds the entire government up. Amari not being there and being told that he has to leave would call into question Mr. Abe's loyalty to his very favorite and very most devoted subjects.
So Abe can't get rid of him.
Allies.
But I don't think the controversy is going to go away because this is playing up in the international press. And usually people wouldn't get that involved in the minutiae of the Abe administration, who the top ministers are to Abe. It's always listening to Abe himself. But in this case, that proximity to power is really key. And so I think this is a problem that's not going to go away. But I just have a question about why did this story get printed? I mean, a little bit, who was the one feeding the information to the
That's
media?
a great question, and people can draw all sorts of conclusions. Let's talk just a little bit about the foundation of this scandal and how it came up. The minister was wined and dined by a fellow in the neighboring prefecture in Chiba who has a construction company who is having a little bit of difficulty being involved in a major public works project.
Right.
He went to the minister, he schmoozed with the Diet secretaries, took them out, wined, dined, and probably gave them a little bit of cash on the side, eventually ingratiated himself so that he could have an audience with the minister. Apparently the story is he brought a gift, as you should when you visit somebody. You don't go tebora, without any gift. And inside the gift, he had an envelope of money. And the story is apparently that I didn't know that the money was there. We started eating the cookies and I found the money.
Well,
you're supposed to take that to the police then if you discover unclaimed money, right?
absolutely. The other day I was at the public library, and there is right there, at kids level, there's this long poster explaining to you all the things you cannot give or receive to politicians, and it was manga characters, and including you can't accept monetary gifts that are traditional at funerals or such things. All kinds of things are simply illegal. So you're right. If you found an envelope inside the box and you didn't take it to the police, yes, you are a criminal. Sorry, you're not just lucky. But you have, first, one thing that one has to have is a perspective in an Asian sense. We have in Malaysia the prime minister getting off supposedly from prosecution for hundreds of millions of dollars that were donated to him by a Saudi royal. And that's all we get to know about it. All right? Comparatively, the amounts are tiny here.
Right.
Okay, that's thing one. But the second thing is that this particular scandal, and what irks or surprises some people, is that this person who paid the bribe made sure to document it, made sure that the minister could not rely on that which is the greatest friend of any politician, which is a bad memory.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't remember us having this conversation. Well, I do, and I have photos, and I have an audio recording of it as well, kind of situation. Takes away that wonderful thing that most politicians rely on.
It sounds like a setup.
Yeah, and then they say, and the vice president of the LDP says, this is a setup.
Yeah.
Well, if I were going to bribe someone, and if that person was a politician, I would want to document it too.
Sure.
First, so that, I might do a little extortion
I know
later.
never to accept anything from Michael now.
But it's true. I remember in the United States the Keating scandal involving 6 U.S. senators who received large amounts of money from Charles Keating, the head of Silverado Savings. And I remember when the reporters asked Charles Keating, did you actually think by handing money to these senators you were buying their votes? And he said, well, I certainly hope so.
Right.
And that is the kind of attitude you really have to have if you're going to bribe a politician. I certainly want to be served. And if you don't, you say that, oh, no, I don't know what you're talking about. You want to have something as a backup.
Right.
So this person who provided the information made sure that there was documentation, that it's not something just made up.
I think the minister has a couple of things going for him. In the first place, the fellow who gave him the money and took all of these recordings is not a very likable character. He's the president of
People who bribe people are generally not likable characters.
Okay, maybe a bribe, but this sort of thing happens in the Diet all the time. When I first heard the story, I knew, yes, if money was exchanged or offered, yes, it disappears into, the secretary's hands. I mean, this is, part and parcel of politics probably everywhere in the world.
Yes, but you do remember that the reason that there was no Prime Minister Ozawa Ichiro was exactly some kind of situation like this, where there was not even documentation. There was just a construction company executive said, I paid the secretary this amount of money on this day.
Right.
And the secretary said, no, you didn't. That never happened. Didn't matter. The prosecutors and the judges agreed with this bold accusation, and we now live with Prime Minister Abe.
Right.
I think history would have been very different.
I thought there was a tradition around the New Year of making payment, putting it in an envelope, Isn't this the New Year's payment that Grandpa gives
Yes,
to the grandchild?
that's true.
Otoshidama.
So,
right.
could it possibly be a misinterpretation of that process?
Well, I don't know. But the second thing I think the minister has going for him is that he is not in charge at an administrative level for the area of business that this fellow was coming in for. He's not the minister of construction or anything having to do with that public works project. So it was perhaps just a gift of money, and who's to say that the minister found the money and returned it back to the donor?
Oh, what did he do with it? What did he say he did?
He's going to tell us today.
Yes.
He couldn't remember. His
the day
memory
our
of what
taping.
exactly happened was fuzzy.
Yes, there are some good parts and some bad parts that reflect on the minister. And the first bad part is that when he was called to task, Bunshun came out on Thursday. He was called to the floor. I mean, there was a big brouhaha in the Diet. The opposition walked out because they wanted an answer, and his answer was, give me a week, let me collect my thoughts, and I'll report to you in a week. And
You know
today is
what?
1
When
week
you
later.
tell the truth, you don't need a good memory.
That's true.
I know that from Judge Judy in the U.S.
No, but
You heard it here first.
Yeah, if you ever lie, you don't have to remember
Right.
anything.
You don't need a week to figure out my story.
Well, this tells you how big a deal it is. It's a big deal for Mr. Suga, for the Prime Minister. If Amari is going to be on the mat and taking the questions as he's taking them right now, the outcome is really big for the administration, for TPP, for a lot of things.
But the thing that's really weird is that Mr. Abe committed to him yesterday, before
Yeah, right.
the testimony.
I thought it was a little
he said
premature.
he's staying on. He's going to be my man. That, okay, you're trying to create the image of a stable cabinet, but wow, what if he blows it into today's testimony?
Right.
We don't know, as we're talking right here, what has happened, but it's a roll of the dice.
Right. Well, Bunshun came out, an advance copy came out last night. It's issued today. And apparently the follow-up story, because they created this huge exposition, the follow-up story is not as bad as it could have been. So probably the minister is revising his story a little bit, and maybe that emboldened the Prime Minister to say, I can stick with him because the positive attributes outweigh the negative attributes.
But you got to think that the publishers of that magazine know to hold back on the second week and wait for the minister to commit to a certain set of facts, whatever, and suddenly
then do the gotcha.
Then you do the gotcha and say that's not what happened, and then you have a new operative set of facts to deal with. That if Abe made a decision based on the interim article, that's really political amateurism.
Well, we talk about press freedom all the time. They've had a week. Mr. Suga's had a week to be working on Bunshun. This kind of story is not good for the country. It's not good for our brand. And you should write a story that is going to help us accommodate the closure of TPP and let this administration go forward to the election of the summer.
You are being a conspiracy advocate.
I think Rick O'Berry, his timing was a little off because, see, he's not getting attention because of the Amari scandal.
Right.
So little did he know, though, when he arrived, that this would happen. That's a huge publication, right? And I'm sure that its circulation is going up as this story is growing. Right.
Please stay tuned to this issue. We're going to be following up on that. This podcast is filmed on Thursday. It's uploaded on Tuesday. More news will come out of that. We don't know what the minister is saying on the floor of the Diet right now, but that will be reported when we get back together again.